you had one tab that's still open. I want to know why this tab is still open, that you Googled, are blue snakes real? And then it looks like maybe I don't know if that's a real snake.
They are real.
But I like that it's an open tab, as if this is like something important to keep in mind, that blue snakes do exist.
This is smooth brain, man.
Greg has exactly
498.
tabs open on his phone right now. Dylan and I went through and picked the best one just for you.
Yeah, I don't remember why. But that one was like, I distinctly didn't close it because there was importance.
It's not just the fact that that question was answered, is that you have to keep that in mind now.
It's because I think like there was these are all linked to goals. They're like a real material action that can be done that would improve my life or others. But instead of doing them, because it's a lot of work, I just keep it an open tab. I'm like, oh, it's in the mix.
Well, what are you going to do with blue snakes?
I think it was for a logo.
Okay, a little Ouroboros.
But see, I don't remember anymore. So it's a big old waste of time.
So that's a closed tab then. You got to close that tab.
Yeah. It's funny that you can hit some of these. It's like, oh, something to buy, or like something that I already used and could have got deleted. And some of them I'm like, no, that's a genuine, like, that's a whole part of my brain represented by one tab. Unless that's a lie and I just think they're in there. Well, the other thing is, okay, so once I cleared all 500, and the way I did it and didn't like make myself upset was that I wrote down in a to-do list, and then I wrote down in a to-buy list, and that covered pretty much everything. Haven't looked at the list since. So in the same way, like we could delete all of these, and like.
So is that in a way because the things on your list you want to keep in your brain, but the list itself doesn't get enough brain space to not be forgotten about?
Yes. What's weird is my brain is actually full of, I would say, anxiety. Like the stress of like I have something to do, but I'm unwilling to look at the actual list to clear that anxiety.
I would love to know, like, you know how on a computer you can pull up your task manager and see like my GPU's like at, being throttled at this percentage right now. Or it's like I wish you could see utilization of brain, where it's, if your brain is a GPU or a CPU, and then you could break down like into individual tasks, how much those things are taking up space. Like I would love to know, it's like anxiety. It's like, how much space is that currently taking up in my brain?
Probably a lot.
Yeah, I would think when anxiety is happening, it's using like most of your brain's functional power.
It's using 100% of my brain's functional power when it's truly happening.
Yeah.
What I just saw on your phone, which I want to talk about because I've heard of, but I don't know what it is. The 4 agreements.
Oh, the 4 agreements are a great one.
What the fuck are the 4 agreements?
I love the 4 agreements.
So it's a Toltec book from like ancient Aztec culture.
Okay.
I think it's Aztec. I don't know if Toltec is different than Aztec. It probably is. Anyways, the 4 agreements is, imagine you had to explain, your goal was to set out and improve someone's life, but you needed to do it as simple as possible. Like the Bible was like intended to help people, I think. And they did it. They didn't just write down a list of instructions because that wouldn't resonate with people. So they tried to go for stories. And then the stories got translated a million times. And now people are trying to pull the meaning out of the stories. And it's like, don't make this an art project for people.
They have like the 10 Commandments though.
Right. So imagine this is like the 4 commandments, and they're trying to do it as like tastefully, like as simply as possible. So there's like the least to get confused.
Okay. So the 4 agreements. Number 1, be impeccable with your word. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in direction of truth and love.
I feel like the speak against yourself one is the one that always stuck out to me on that. And we had this conversation a little bit where it's like, at what level do you bring up your insecurities with other people? Because there's a difference between, hey, can you help me, talk through my emotions and like, vent a little bit and blah, blah, blah. And then there's also a fine line there, though, of going too far to where you're like self-deprecating in a way where you're actually convincing yourself of the thing and making it real, and not only making the agreement to yourself that this is a real issue, but also making the agreement with other people that you have this real issue. And if it's something that affects others or affects the way you interact with your own emotions day to day, like that can be detrimental to use your words against yourself.
Yeah, words have extreme power. And I find like when I joke and say, "Oh, I fucking hate myself,"
Mm-hmm.
I start to believe that after a
Mhm.
bit. So like that's why manifesting is so important, and telling
Mhm.
yourself that you love yourself is super important,
Mhm.
because ultimately at the end of the day, whether you want to admit it or not, those words, well, they may not be like a 1-to-1 ratio on
Mhm.
like what you say and what you feel. They do affect you eventually.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or it's like I've seen in cases, where if you're trying to sort of like garner some sympathy or some understanding from other people. Like let's just use like your looks for an example, where if you're constantly telling somebody like, "Oh, like I feel so ugly today, like I'm so ugly," blah, and that's the vibe. Even if you're not at all, even if you're like a really attractive person,
Mhm.
you will start to convince yourself you are, and convince that like anybody else that you're telling that, like, "Oh, this person is kind of ugly actually." Like like that literally will become the reality of it.
Uh-huh.
And it's I don't think a lot of people think about that.
Okay. Number 2, don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering.
And those two go together in a cool way where they're saying you should never speak badly about yourself because it makes you feel bad about yourself.
Mhm.
But you also shouldn't speak badly about other people. Like be careful with what you say because farted in my brain.
Well, you're. I feel like where you're going is you want to be careful about saying, if you're constantly calling everybody else ugly, kind of because you're projecting your own feeling of feeling ugly,
Right.
where you're projecting your own insecurities out into the world onto other people, and eventually those I don't even know if it's saying that they'll well up in you, but it's that one's more of an understanding that, hey, if somebody's coming at you with a bunch of negative energy, it's really because it's happening in them. It's not because of you.
Yeah.
So it's important to then not have number 2 create number 1, where somebody else projects things onto you and then you confirm those beliefs onto yourself and then they become real.
Yeah. And I feel like we're all our own like light prisms in so many ways, where there's a bunch of mirrors inside your body and it's reflecting light all across you and out your mouth.
Mm.
And I think that everyone's so personal and individualistic. What I have to say doesn't have much to do with others as much as it has to do with how I see the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there's light going into that hole, into my mouth hole, my eyes hole, my eye holes. But like it's so much of experience and opinion, and words are just based off of my own personal computer
Yeah.
and how that's getting like twisted.
Mm-hmm.
I really kind of took that on a tangent, but
No, that was perfect.
Yeah.
Number 3, don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life.
We talked about this one. I don't know if it's released yet, but about there's 2 types of people: the ones who explicitly say what they want and the ones who use social convention. He's saying go 100% on be explicit.
Mm-hmm.
Because the first 2 are also very like be you centric.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're in charge of how you feel and don't put your feelings on other people. And when other people try to put feelings on you, be like, nah. And then when you do need to interact between you and another person, hit it home with like, let's be clear. Let's be like,
Mm-hmm. Like don't side talk. Don't say something and know what you mean by saying that thing if it's not like. Let
If
me
you have like a
restart that.
specific goal with your interaction,
Mm-hmm.
it's all right to like work around that goal. If your goal is to like enjoy an interaction with someone, you can kind of talk about whatever you want to talk about. But if you're trying to get something out of somebody, or you need help with something, you need to be able to ask. And sometimes they're hard question to ask because it's personal.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't like beat around the bush.
Yeah. Like let's say even for getting a raise in the workplace or something. Like you need to ask for a raise. It's like you can't just be like, hey, like, yeah, I feel like I've been, doing really good lately. Like I've been enjoying the work that I'm doing, and I think there's, a lot like can happen here, blah, blah, blah. Where just sort of giving that viewpoint of it is like, yeah, somebody might interpret that as you want to raise, but like definitely like there's no way that they're going to immediately be like, they're not going to take action on that. They're only going to take action if you actually explicitly say what you mean.
Yeah,
bro, just say it with your chest.
Yes, say it with your chest.
definitely. I feel like so far these 3 commandments, they've been like, don't talk, like do.
Mm-hmm.
And like I mean, they're all kind of word centric, I guess. So like it is talking, but
Mhm.
like use as few words as possible to express what you want to express, but don't let those words affect you too much.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of power. It's
Well, the 4th ties this in, where the first 3 are like, how should you talk to yourself? How should you take the words that you get from other people? And then how should you communicate back and forth between other people is 3.
Mhm.
And then 4 has to do with actual action. So if you want to.
Okay, number 4, always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you're healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret.
I feel like Rick Rubin's huge on that one. Like it was interesting listening to his podcast with Lex Friedman, where Lex Friedman feels like he constantly has this self-critic in him, where, you know, even when he's done with something, he's kind of like, wow, that could have been like so much better. Like I'm proud of it, but there's so many things I could have done differently. And he was asking like Rick Rubin if he ever feels that way about the albums that he produces, and Rick Rubin is like, no. Like, what do you mean? Like I did my best.
Mhm.
So what is there to regret about it? And I always, my goal is to do my best. So if in the moment I wasn't proud of something, then we would have just kept doing it until I felt like we have done our best. And once you do your best, there's like, why are you even thinking about the regret thing? Because you did your best in that moment and that's all you can do. How can you expect to do anything more than your best?
Yeah, you can't be in a different moment giving your best in the
Mhm.
future. And that kind of goes to being a doer and like, oh, I can execute this idea so much better when I know more about the craft.
Mm-hmm.
But your ideas are your ideas. And if you try to hold on to that idea for too long, you're not going to be able to execute it as well later because it won't be as fresh of an idea.
Yeah.
So like if I have a podcast idea I want to do, but I don't quite have the tools to execute, I just have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's linked to time. Like your actual best is the best you can do because of the time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like, oh, what was the best work he did over his whole life? Nah, that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about at any given second, try your hardest,
Mhm.
and whatever that is what it is. I don't know if that clarified it at all. I very rarely am able to like speak my thoughts.
I mean, that's kind of part of what the 4 Agreements is about, though, right? Is it's hard to speak your thoughts, but at least there should be the knowledge that it's like, well, here's a sort of a framework of how to try to speak your thoughts. It doesn't mean you can do it, but you can try your best, which is like what you're saying, why the 4th Agreement kind of ties it all in. Is like it is sort of a roundabout thing where it really is like it's hard to pin down what they're really trying to tell you to do. Like, yeah, do you say barely any words? Do you say all the words that you're thinking and just don't put a filter on them? But it changes moment to moment where it's like you're not always going to know exactly how to put your thoughts into words, but like you might as well, you know, do your best in that moment to do it.
Yeah. I love the level at which that book is written because it's close enough to like the eternal one thing that everyone's always trying to get after, but it's also it applies to a complex lifestyle too. So you could give that to someone who's like in LA living like a very social forward life.
Mhm.
And they would get used from it. They'd be like, oh, I should gossip less and be nice to myself. And it's like, that's a totally valid way to take away from it. But you can also look at like the way I read it personally was very much close your eyes, lay flat on the floor and perceive what's happening. And you start with, okay, how do I process my personal feelings and thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
How do I process other people's thoughts coming in? And then I elevate to a more social level and be like, how do I interact with people? And then the more overarching, like, how do I spend my time? Because I don't think spending your time probably should be speaking. It should be mostly doing. I think the 4th Agreement that deals with like, I like that it doesn't use discipline. It uses trying your best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because some nights maybe you're not going to brush your teeth, but anytime you can brush your teeth, you should. But you know what I mean? It holds you to what is possible.
Mm-hmm.
Not what you would like.
Yeah.
Did you brush your teeth last night, Greg?
No, I did not. I didn't take no probation. Dude, my teeth brushing has been horrendous, dude. You can just look at my teeth and that tells you exactly how well I'm doing in life. If I flossed, I want to look at my teeth now. If I flossed that day, I'm fucking cracked. you're like, oh, hey, did you do that? The answer is yes, dude, because I floss. So all the other shit it's like a huge snowball effect.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason it's so hard to keep that train is I put all that weight behind it. Like when I floss, I'm like, I'm doing everything well now.
Okay.
And sometimes when I muster up the courage to floss, I'm like, oh my God, I got to clean my room. I got to fix my car. I got to do all the work I haven't been doing at work. Then I got to do the podcast. Then I got Max's like music stuff. I got to I got to help out there. Then it's like, oh my God, I haven't been talking to Kyria. I haven't talked to my family. So all of that is, and then I'm like, you know what? I'll just
rushing back.
We'll do another TikTok. We'll just watch one more, and then 10 hours go by, and Mateo's like, what the did you do all day? I asked you for a 10-minute task, and I was like, yeah, a lot of burden there.
And that goes back to always trying your best. And that's all. That's not even if you view it as a day-to-day thing, like I'm going to try my best today, that's going to overwhelm you if you think about every task you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it literally second to second and you break it down in as small chunks as possible, I'm just going to floss because I can floss right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
What's next? I'm going to do this because I can do this right now. And you're never going to get to everything you want to do.
No.
And I guess that's just the idea of nobody's perfect. You could be really good if you just break it down into little chunks.
Yeah, I feel like you almost got to reframe it where if you're going to floss, you're just flossing because you know that your best is going to get a little bit better if you floss. But it doesn't mean that you have to it doesn't mean you have to carry all those burdens that you think you should because you floss that day. I have the same thing with shaving my face. Or if I shave my face and just feel good, then I'm like, I'm just going to be better. And I don't know what I'm going to be better in what way yet, but I know that I'm just going to feel better and do better.
And it's true.
Mm.
What's cool is the proof is in the pudding with all these things. It's we don't need to know the mechanism of action of why manifesting works, but if you do something with a solid intention behind it, it works.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you have the association of that thing working already. If you've proved it to work in the past and you're like, God, I just do this thing and then things do get better. That's a pretty easy thing to manifest.
Yeah. It's cool how your brain will immediately restructure to whatever dopamine system you want to do, right? If you set your goal as just floss, don't become the best person. Just right now, floss because it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
You do it, your brain will be like, good job. And then that gives you a push to go to the next thing.
Yeah.
That's a while, you can get out of a hole so easy. It just seems really hard if you're looking at it the wrong way.
Because you're looking at the whole staircase.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And flossing is kind of just one stair.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's not a staircase because you could stop on that stair and there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those days are nice when I just sit on my stairs and I kind of just take a deep breath.
Yeah.
I like those days a lot. But I think they only mean something after you got that workout and I'm doing a bunch of stairs before that.
Yeah. I really like sometimes going up my stairs backwards.
How's that?
Well, because then sometimes I'll do better if I just completely try to disregard how far away the end goal is.
Step by step.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess so. But it's I
Put
don't
the
even want to
blinders on.
see the other steps. I'm let's just start doing steps because I know.
Yeah, exactly.
I can do those unconscious steps backwards up the stairs without really I know I'm not going to fuck it up because I know what these are just easy steps. I should just be doing these things.
Yeah, and I think that's better. That's definitely better than nothing. But I feel like the really successful people in life, they have their little steps planned out each and every day. And then they have those equaling larger steps in the week and even larger steps in the month and the year and then their life.
And getting back to the thought minimalism, making sure that those goals are streamlined and correct, right? Because if I can't do that with all my goals, I have too many. So I have to get rid of a ton of them so that the ones that remain can be done and I have the amount of time to do them.
Yeah, you definitely gotta, before you start walking backwards, you gotta know where the staircase is leading and what's going on.
Because I run away from the staircase. That's not a good, because I'm not looking at the goal either, but it's not
And this almost even goes back to the guy saying you should be only executing your great ideas. If you could only do so many things in a day and you kind of know which ones are better than the other ones, you should probably be working towards those steps and those goals that are great.
One other tie back is the first agreement. Being impeccable with your word is hey, so everything that we socially constructed onto our brains is is a matrix of words that we've memorized and apply as like rules to our lives. And he's saying, whoa, be super careful with which one of those you validate. Because for me, a real thing is I'm either good or bad. I'm either I'm on a upward trend or a downward trend. And that's not the case. When I reframe it and take it step by step, I actually get things done. That's the only time I get things done. I've never been able to go from like, I'm going to get it all good at once. It's never happened.
No, I think that's a really good point. Yeah.
I love that each one of they're all so connected at so many different levels. Like if you need them at really like huge existential level, they'll get you. And if you need them really basic, like how do I floss? They still got you. That's why I think it's better than the Bible. That was the whole text.
I agree. I mean, never read the Bible, but I think I like those better.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like really old texts that say the same thing. There's definitely some Zen stuff that uses the same agreements. It's just, this was so easily packaged. I think it was really cool.
That's another interesting thing Rick Rubin had brought up in one of his interviews, where he's like, yeah, if I'm going to take big life advice, I don't really want to take any life advice that anybody's coming up with in modern day, because it's not proven or tested. Like nobody's had any chance to figure out if it's real. Like if I'm going to take big life advice and try to follow other people's wisdom, I want that wisdom to be like ancient wisdom, because there's been time to prove it. And if the wisdom's still around, it probably is pretty true.
I think all of the important thoughts have already been thought. That's why I bought those super old ass books to read through. Because I'm like, there's no, the way it's applied to our world, that's our job. But the actual concept behind it is already pre-thunk out.
Because I think it's life, right? They're concepts that you just learn through a well-lived life. And a well-lived life is just as well-lived 10,000 years ago as it is now.
Yeah.
So you should be figuring out sort of the same lessons even 10,000 years ago.
Yeah, but I think what keeps this from being like a negative thing is that we should always be finding new ways to reframe this information, this ancient information. Not just new ways to like apply it to our lives, but like this is a podcast, right? This is a podcast right now.
This is a podcast right now.
This is a podcast right now.
And we're trying to frame these things to you in like our own manner. And they're like ancient ways, but we're trying to make it more personal and we're trying to like convey it, you know?
Right.
This is a podcast right now.
You're watching a podcast right now. But you could all like, there is so many people that are like, I absolutely do not care what a super old Greek dude said or someone who lived with rocks in Toltec culture.
And I can kind of respect that.
Yeah, exactly. But a dude who like I'm sure learned from his grandpa, took these stories and wisdom, wrote a book very cleanly and well written in the 60s, which then was popular, that I don't remember where I found it from, but some obscure place. Like I definitely stumbled into this. It was probably at like a store and just saw it on a shelf and was like, this looks cool. And then you saw it in my notes and then we shared it. Someone on the receiving end might be like, the only way this was ever getting me was through you guys. Cause like, I'm not going to bump into this in my own life. And you guys also, have you read the book? Either of you?
No.
So you were able to process the information in a really like enriching way. Like you've made that information more, like you pre-chewed it for people.
Baby burden people information. Dude.
Yeah, dude, that's what Smooth Brain's mission statement is we're about to baby bird you this philosophy.
Holy, we found it, boys.
Smooth brain.
Smooth brain.
This is Smooth Brain,